What is up, and welcome back to another episode of working on the Forester. But thankfully, it might actually be spring outside, which means the STI is coming out soon, but not in today's video. Today, as I said, we're going to be working on the Forester once again. Today, if you guys are new here, you probably don't recognize these, but if you've been around for a while, you will recognize these. These were on my Forester before I put the Hella 4000s on. Well, we're going to put these to work, and actually, we're not installing one or two of these. We're actually going to be installing 4 of these on my Subaru Forester. I've kind of talked about this a little bit here and there, but we're actually going to be putting these today on my roof rack. But before we get started, as I said, make sure you guys are subscribed because that car is coming out of the garage very soon. I'm super excited for it. It's been a while since I drove this just because I was in Vancouver and then it snowed and then just a bunch of stuff happened. So I haven't got to drive the STI in a long time. I've been starting it every couple months and I just can't wait to get it out on the road. And obviously, once it's out on the road, it's time to go do some racing, some autocross. So that's the plans for the STI, so make sure you're subscribed. And also, if you're interested in the Forester, the overlanding, and flat 4 off-road, make sure you're subscribed for that also, because we have some bigger announcements and some cool new plans for some content on this channel coming soon. So if you're not subscribed, you're gonna miss all of that to do with the Forester as well as the STI. But that's enough rambling on about me and my cars. Let's go ahead and actually do what we're supposed to be doing in today's video and installing all these Hellas on my car. So what we'll be doing first is I gotta figure out how to harness this up. We have some sheathing, we have, as you guys saw in the last episode, some Deutsch connectors, which are always fun. Messed those up last episode, but I will do it better this time. And then I've got a spool of wire, some brackets. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna figure out how these lights mount up, and then we're gonna go ahead and make our harness, and then we can go ahead. The harness is gonna have some Deutsch connectors. I'm not gonna Deutsch connect every light because that's gonna be a pain. I'm gonna Deutsch connect the harness up on the rack, and then I can remove that. So theoretically I can remove the rack and leave the lights on it, or I can remove the harness and remove all the lights or switch out a light or so forth. So yeah, let's go ahead and get these mounted up and figure out how we're gonna do that. So you think putting these on, since we've already got our bolt, would be pretty easy. Just slap it on the rack and you'd be good to go. Well, you'd be sorely mistaken because ARB did something. ARB decided that, well, we're gonna put holes for lights on your rack, but we're actually gonna make them inaccessible. Look at that. They're right against that kind of cargo bracket. So you can't bolt a light to it. The only lights that do work on here are the like low profile rectangular ones. But I want these Hella 500s on here, and that's what we're gonna do. So I thought of a little trick to make this happen. What we're gonna do is take this extruded aluminum corner. I do have to shave down that one little part in the back and make a 90 degree. And then I'm gonna take my Hella, take it to 90 degrees, and then put it through here. I do have to drill a hole because these are M10 bolts. Don't know why you need an M10 on a light like this. And I wanted to use M8s because everything else is an M8. So I just have to drill a little bit out of this bracket. But essentially drill this in here so that it will sit on that bracket right there. And then we'll have enough room that it will clear the bar and it will have pivot and up and down. So we'll have full adjustment and we'll be able to mount it on our ARB roof rack like we're wanting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prepare these brackets and then show you exactly how they mount up. Well, I was gonna show you this on the car, but it turns out I found a much better way. I didn't even have to drill it, and look we've got our angle right on here, and this just mounts onto the car. So what I did is I took what they use for their mounting brackets on the lights itself. So these go right here, so it like clamps down the little piece of plastic on the Hella light itself. So I took those off of the ones I had, and then the ones that I came in, I just took a look at these because they're actually off already. And usually you put this guy in. It's a M10, like big chunky bolt. Don't know why, as I said, you need it on these small lights. But this is what comes in, and you're supposed to feed it through here. And then when you tighten it on your vehicle, this clamps down and this stops it from pivoting. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, totally. But what if I took my M8 bolts here, fed it through, and then mounted this to our 90 degree, right? So it mounts the light to our 90 degree, and then we don't have to drill in, and it leaves just a perfect amount of nut just sticking out here and bolts so it doesn't move. And then because we have these little tabs here, this thing doesn't pivot, but the bolt still spins. But use a trusty impact and you can drive it home and it's not spinning. So what I'm gonna do now, since we figured out an even easier way to do this, so I'm gonna mount all 4 of these on here, and then what we can do is go ahead and mount these on the car and start thinking about the harness. And there we go. We have all 4 of the lights on the roof rack, as you can probably tell now. The one mount is being funny. This one's sitting lower than the rest, but they actually fit really well. As I said, I do have adjustability side to side based off of that lower bolt, and then I have up and down based off of the mount we used. Actually, we got a little bit of side to side too with the little clamp mounts. The one thing is weird is when you clamp them down, it kind of loosens it off and then you got to retighten it. So jam a screwdriver in there and then just use your impact and you're good to go. So now with these on, it's time to think about how we're going to wire this all into the relay. So I have plans to put bigger bulbs in these. You can actually do a 75 or an 80 watt bulb in this. The only thing is, if I do 80 watts in each of those, I'm going to be way pushing the limit of 200. I actually have one 300 relay, but that's for the front ones, because as you guys know, I can put a higher wattage bulb in these front ones. And if I put a higher wattage bulb than what they have, I think they have like a 85, you can get like a 110. If you put a 110, then I'm going to be pushing the 240 and on a 300 relay, so that's good. It's just these back ones. What I think I'm going to do is it's going to use a little more wire, but I think I'd rather do that, is I'm going to wire the front, or the inner 2 as one switch, and then the outer 2 as one switch. So I can turn them off independently of each other. And then theoretically, if I wanted different bulbs in there, I could. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, as I'll have 2 relay switches for the roof lights. That way I can kind of disable and enable them, because they are the same light, but if I do it this way, then I am able to put the higher H4 bulbs I believe in here, so we can push a little more power and get a little more light out of the halogens. But that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to go ahead, plan my wiring route, plan that, and then I got to take these down and start wiring. So I'm going to plan it and then show you guys in a minute. And well, there we go. We have our wiring runs, or just a single one, because I can figure out what I need to do for running 2 sets, but essentially it runs here. We're going to attach it to this crossbar. I've got some nice sheathing. We're going to sheathe the whole thing, and then we're going to run it to cross this crossbar up, around, and then the connector will be in here. And then with this connector, then it'll run down the A pillar here. As I said, I have some nice sheathing. I'm going to sheathe it, and then I'm going to make a little like zip tie thing that kind of sticks it into the seal, and then it's going to come all the way down through here, and then right to our relay box, which is over here, as well as the ground. I will be running 2 power, but I'll be running a common ground, so 1 ground and 2 power up there. So again, kind of reducing the amount of wires, but also increasing it, because we're going to have 2 sets of power running up there. But that is kind of what we're looking at for the relay system for the Hellas. So I'm gonna now take what I have here and make a nice little harness, and then show you guys once the harness is ready. I'm gonna have to pull the lights down, obviously, because we're hardwiring them. Make that upper harness, and then from that upper harness, make our 2 power harnesses that run down here and go in here. And well, we're getting somewhere. So here's the Deutsch connector that I'm using for connecting the harness on the rack to the power, and then as you can see, nicely sleeved. And then we've actually got our first light in here, sleeved even the little wire running from the harness to the lines, and essentially this will continue running along. So I've cut all my wires. Now I just got to kind of add the lights, which is always a fun thing. So now that I showed you kind of what I've got going on for the harness, it's pretty basic, just using some nice sleeving, and I'm using black tape because I don't have enough heat shrink to kind of do all these weird little corners and stuff. So I'm using black tape. Maybe I'll heat shrink them someday, maybe I'll make it better harness. Who knows? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue and get all 4 of these lights on now that you kind of see what I'm doing with the harness. And then I'll show you the light harness before I do the power harness, which will probably be a lot easier. The hardest part with that is probably just snaking the cable through the sheathing because it's kind of hard to run 3 wires through it. So I'm going to get this harness all done and then catch up to you then. And after a couple of hours, we have our harness all done and ready to go. So it's pretty much time to put these on and tighten them up and then make our power harness that connects to this and connects to a relay. But as you can see, it looks pretty clean, especially since I technically have 2 different power lines in here and they all kind of come to this plug. So you won't even be able to tell that I have 2 switches to control these, but just because the way I've like sheathed it and everything, it's pretty slick. I think maybe next time I would try to use heat shrink. I don't know how I'd use heat shrink on these tees. If anyone knows, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I think this fiberglass sheathing I have is really, really nice. And I would never do this kind of project without it again because it makes like these kind of nice little harnesses look really good. So now it's time to take the harness from down there and put it up there with all the lights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything down. I'm actually using those security nuts too. I've used them on the front, might as well use them up top just to make sure everything's locked down. So I'll be using those across all of this, mounting that all down, and then I'm going to go ahead, show you what I have to do to get the wires through the harness because I'm using some pretty thin sheathing. I could probably went 1 size up, but it makes it really nice and tight. So I guess I'm not too worried, but I'm going to have to essentially snake a different line through before I pull the 3 wires through because 3 wires going through like half a meter of, actually it's more like a meter of sheathing isn't going to be very much fun. So let's get those lights up and then go ahead and make the last harness. And just like that, we have all 4 mounted up. I just got to tighten down the bolts one last time, but everything is mounted up solid and we still got the adjustability, which is pretty cool. And the wire, it'll be hard to see kind of on camera, but you don't see the wire. What I did is I used about 20 zip ties probably, but it does something like I kind of just hid the zip ties behind the lights and then tucked the wire or the harness behind the bar, just ran it along here and then down under here, which then will run to the power harness. But it's a pretty slick install, I have to say. I'm actually looking forward, it's getting dark now, so we can, once we get the power in, we can go ahead and test them out. But there we go, they're all mounted up. I'm just gonna tighten down the bolts and then we can start on the power harness. Now that we got everything tightened up on the Forester, it's really time to go ahead and run our power and ground. So what I gotta do is get these 3, I think they're 10 gauge, 12 gauge wire through this. So this is it's a pretty expandable. If you see it, like when I press down, it kind of squishes. But I gotta get it through 0.8 of a meter of this. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to run 1, because I can run 1 easy. It's running 3 at a problem. And I'm going to actually not run 1. I'll run a separate one I have, run it through, tape these on, and then pull these through, because I think that's the only way we're gonna be able to get these through. Because I can do short pulls just by like squishing it and pulling it, but once you get into a long, like almost a meter pull, then you're running into the issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and hopefully we'll get this on, get the Deutsch connector on, and all we gotta do is plug this into a relay, plug this to a ground, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and do that. And with our wires pulled through, it's time to go ahead and add a Deutsch connector. So let's go ahead, make sure we got the right pin out on the top, and add our connector, and we should be pretty much good to go. And with our harness done, it should be as easy as that. So there we go, check that out. We have those on. I took the covers off because we might be testing it, and then I ran the harness. We clipped it in right under the rack and then ran it under and down here. all I did here is I took a zip tie and just put it under the window seal, like lift it up and then put it under so that it won't move. It's nice and tucked in there. It looks really slick. And then right into the engine bay where we have our panel right there, or our relay box. So I just ran the wires right through here, onto the ground here, and then down into there. So it is actually all wired up. So that means, theoretically, we should be able to go ahead, hit the switches on the car, and see those lights light up. So cross our fingers and let's see if this works. Okay, ignition is on. So I think it's this, well, yep, that works. That blinded me. Okay, so we got our outside lights. And we got our inside lights. So, how does that look? You guys are seeing it before me. Okay, that's pretty sweet. And with those working, I think we gotta wrap it up. So I think what we're gonna do is put on the Hella grills like we have on the outside. You gotta have all four if you're going to run the Hella grills. So we're gonna slap these on the middle two and then we're all done. And well, there we go. We have the four Hella lights on the roof rack. Without having to drill anything, without having to do any major modifications to the Subaru, we were able to bolt it on and it worked really well. I was actually surprised of how well it works. Car things never work like that. But that's gonna be the end. But you didn't think I was gonna go ahead and end the video without taking it for a test drive because, well, it's dark. So let's go ahead, test them out. And well, there we go. We took it for a little bit of a test drive. As you can see, they're more of a flood, where these ones, I had to turn them on up front just to see what they're like. They are very much directional with a little bit of flood, where those are all flood. So it'll be interesting to see when we go on a night run to see how much that lights up, because I did point those two outer ones a little bit out, almost acting as ditch lights, while I kept the front ones straight. I did have to bump the front ones up, or the middle ones up a little bit, just because they're light up my hood more than I'd like. But as you guys saw, it definitely improved the lighting, especially with more of a flood area. But that is going to be it for today's video because, well, we got the lights on. And hopefully the trails dry up just a little bit so we can go ahead and do a night run soon and test them out. But that is going to be it for today's episode. But make sure, as I said, you're following along, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe, because SCI is coming out soon and we got a lot of stuff coming up with Flat 4 Off-Road. But until next time, peace out and stay humble.